I still remember the smell of coal smoke, thick and sweet with danger, the day India's first train breathed into life. It was 1853, Bombay to Thane, a stretch of iron rails just 21 miles long. But to us it felt as though the whole earth had changed. I was only a young guard then, my brass-button coat almost too stiff for my shoulders, my lantern shining with new polish. People called me a servant of the Iron Road, but I felt more like its custodian, carrying a secret key to the future. The villagers had gathered at the track's edge as the monster prepared to move. The engine hissed, a dragon of steel and fire, chuffing out black clouds that swallowed the sky. Women clutched their children and pulled them back. Men stood with folded hands as if in prayer. Some muttered it was a demon, a Lohika boot, come to swallow the earth. The first blast of the whistle made several fall flat on the ground, convinced their gods were warning them, and I stood beside this iron beast, trembling with awe and pride, whispering words even I barely believed. It is not boot, it is the future. I watched the people board. The British officers got the first carriage, clean benches, bottles of gin, and that irritating air of ownership. Traders in turbans, polished shoes, and the smell of cardamom crammed into the second carriage, their chests heavy with coin boxes and silk bundles. And in the last carriage sat the peasantry, bare feet, tired eyes, and rough bundles of grain and pots. They looked more like prisoners than passengers, whispering prayers, staring at walls, uncertain if the machine would explode. The rails had made them neighbors in a way normal life never had. 3 carriages, 3 different worlds, yet shackled together on one track, screaming forward through smoke and speed. For years after, I lived in the rhythm of trains. The whistle became my clock, the clang of couplings my temple bell. I learned the language of the machine, the hiss of impatience when the boiler was too hot, the groan of hunger when coal was running low, the shrill high blast that meant clear road ahead. At night, sparks danced from the funnel like fireflies, dazzling villages along the line. Children ran after us shouting, dogs barked madly, while elders stood with folded arms, torn between honouring and cursing this moving furnace. For me, the railway was no longer just steel on earth. It was a living creature. I was its silent companion, lantern in hand, the man who felt its heartbeat but could not claim it as his own. Then came 1857, the year the heartbeat of the land split into war. One evening, news travelled faster than the train itself. The sepoys had risen in Meerut, refusing greased cartridges, turning guns upon their officers. From one station to another, whispers blew like wildfire. Rebellion. Cities were besieged, cantonments set aflame, village after village flooding with resentment. And in this tumult, the railway, newborn and tender, was forced into the war, where once my trains had carried burly traders or anxious pilgrims. They now groaned under crates of gunpowder, rifles stacked in bundles, and wide-eyed British recruits shipped to front lines they barely understood. British officers cursed delays, barked orders, demanded the railway serve as their army's backbone. And rebels, wise to this new lifeline of empire, struck it like a drum of war. They tore up tracks, derailed engines, burned carriages loaded with powder. Where I once smelled coal, I now smelled ash and blood. I saw one such fire with my own eyes. A night train, wagons heavy with ammunition, thundered into a small station where sepoys had gathered, silent and unseen. They let the engine pass, then swarmed upon its flanks. Bayonets clanged on metal, sparks lit shadows, and before long torches touched crates. The blast that followed was deafening. Iron curled like paper, wheels broke like bones, Amid the fire, the locomotive cried out one final whistle, high and haunting, like a dying beast. The rebels cheered at the flames. The British screamed of treachery. And I, standing in uniform with lantern quivering, could only stare at the monster I had once sworn to serve, now broken and burning upon its own rails. For months this was my life. To the British I was employee and watchman. To the land I was eyes and witness. At night in smoky huts I whispered to village fighters, "Tomorrow, a train of soldiers from Bombay. Tomorrow, powder bound for Delhi." I pointed to maps, lent my ears to their anger, but with sunrise I was back in uniform, standing at attention, raising my lantern to give clearance to the very same trains. Some would call me traitor, some would call me patriot. I have no wish for either crown. I was merely a man caught between two truths. I lived from the railway, but my soul throbbed with my people. It could not last. One afternoon, I watched a divided train approach, a cruel vision etched forever in my mind. In the front wagons, British redcoats sat stiff, rifles polished. In the rear, the Empire had forced poor villagers, chained to shovels and hammers, destined to dig, lay, and die upon the tracks. Both were passengers, but prisoners all the same, tied not by freedom but by command. When rebels attacked at that station, bullet and cannon fire mixed helplessly with cries of labourers. Blood, British and Indian alike, spilled on the same sleepers, staining the Iron Snake red. I realized then the railway was no loyalist, no rebel, no patriot, no tyrant. She was only a vessel bearing the burden her masters gave. She was, like me, an unwilling passenger of the Revolt. And yet how symbolic she became. To the British, proof that their empire was modern, efficient, eternal. To the rebels, proof that alien power could be disrupted. Its veins choked, its body burned. To me, the railway was neither proof nor possession, but a question. Could progress born from the hand of a conqueror ever truly belong to the conquered? Could iron forged in London run with the heartbeat of Hindustan? When flames dimmed and the rebellion began to ebb, I remained at the tracks. Bent rails were hammered straight. Burnt engines were rebuilt. British officers patted their proud machines, muttering that empire was safe again. Villagers returned to their huts, staring uneasily at the whistle, torn between fear and wonder. And I, older than before, touched the smoking sides of that iron beast and whispered, "You are witness, as am I. Neither of us free, but both of us eternal." Years have passed since then. My beard has whitened, my uniform grown loose upon thin shoulders. Still the trains thunder by. Still they scream into night, carrying lovers, labourers, soldiers, prisoners, merchants, pilgrims. Some smile, some cry, some sleep through the shrieking wheels. But whenever that high whistle cuts the air, my heart stirs. Back to 1857. I see once more the flames licking at carriages, rebels sprinting across embankments, redcoats shouting furiously, villagers dropping pickaxes in terror. I hear again that dying scream of a train, not carrying passengers, but dying as one. My story is not of victory nor of defeat. It is the story of a witness, a railway guard who lived at the seam of two ages, the birth of steel and the outcry of rebellion. The world saw trains as mere machines, but I knew them as mirrors, and in the mirror of their smoke, I saw both despair and hope, bondage and freedom, the conqueror and the rebel standing on the same track. The railway has kept running all these years. It is no longer demon nor miracle. It is simply India's heartbeat of iron. But for me, it will always remain what it was on that day in 1857, an unusual passenger in the struggle for freedom.